If, excuse me, everybody, if we could get to our seats, we're going to do a quick presentation. We're on a short schedule to give you some background information, and then we're going to open it up to more questions and answers. So we'll be able to get a lot of questions in tonight. So we're going to start quickly and go through a slide presentation very, very fast that has some information some of you have seen before, but there's some additional information that I think will be useful to know. So my name is Peter Batten, as many of you have probably gotten to know me. But for those who don't know me, I'm one of the managing partners at Spectrum Development who's developing the Mason Row project. I'm going to ask, and we have some other folks here from our team, our engineer, our traffic consultants coming in at 8 o'clock tonight for questions about traffic. And we have Dick Buskell here with us, who's also a managing partner with Spectrum. I'm going to ask Jeff Whitman, who is the lead architect. Oh, okay.
One of the things that I'd like to do before we get started is to see the chairs of the boards and commissions who are here. If you'll just raise your hand so I can find you in the audience. Okay, thank you so much.
Sorry, Ruth. Ruth, I apologize for that. Just rushing. So I'm going to ask Jeff Whitman, who is with GTM and the lead architect. He is one of the partners at GTM and has been the lead person on the design side and architectural side for Mason Row. So we're going to talk a little bit about the project that was submitted in July originally before we changed it to Mason Row. Then we're going to get into some things about Mason Row, about traffic, and about the fiscal impact in this presentation. So I'm going to turn it over to Jeff right now. We have about 15 minutes, so we're going to go through this very, very quickly.
Thank you. As Peter had mentioned, I'll get started here with what was the previous concept. As you can see here, this is what was submitted on the July 3rd, and this is also what was commented to on the Gary's staff report relative to this design. As you can see, we have all four sides were enclosed. We had a series of stepped condominium buildings on the Park Avenue facade. We had it was certainly a retail experience, and what we've done is, after comments that came back to from our work session back in July, we had gone back to the drawing board and come up with a new concept, which is really sort of revised this based on initial comments from Sure, that'd be great. That's great. Is this on? Okay. As I was saying, that the concept that we had before, we had some great comments that came back to us at the time, where there was a lot of requests to open up the project a little bit further. Again, just for clarification, this is the old site plan, which you can see there was basically a lot of surface parking with two openings, and that had an access point through the site. Okay, now I want to get into our current concept. So again, this is our site here along Northwest Broad Street. These represent some photos of the existing conditions that are currently in place at the corner of Northwest and Broad. Also along Park Avenue, slightly on Park Avenue as well. This is our current site plan. We've introduced, instead of a covered sort of drive aisle through the site, we actually opened up the project where we have a pedestrian-friendly market street called Mason Lane. It will be also joined in here with a market square. This will be lined with retail all the way up and down. Also along West Broad Street and down Northwest Street where retail will exist. We'll have some surface parking, about 83 spots. And we have, on this portion over here, we have a condominium building fronting Park Avenue. This is actually access to our P1 parking level here only, and this is accessing to lane P2 parking below. This represents the floors above, where we have everything depicted in yellow here is our apartments. We have a hotel corner element here. This is now all open, or this is all open to the sky above. We have condominium building here. This is an interior amenity space for the apartments and condos. And as you can see, one of the things that we tried to do as well is we're trying to step back or be a little more cognizant of the scaling along Park Avenue, our Park Avenue neighbors, by stepping back the building. As you can see previously, it goes from 3 stories on the eastern side and begins to step back to 4 stories, and then to 5 stories, and then a 5/1 condition as it goes further west. And you can see it as it progresses through the slide, so you can see it beginning to taper back quite a bit as it goes. And these are all 5/1. This is a 5/1, meaning that there's 5 stories over retail of hotel. This is 5/1 apartments over retail as well. This is a comparison to our project to some other projects that have, most recent projects that are similar here in the City of Falls Church. Our FAR, which is our floor area ratio, which is our overall building massing on the acreage of the lot, is approximately the same. We're a little bit less than a residential FAR. We're 3 to 6 stories at our site. The Tinner Hill is 6 stories, and the Rushmark is 7 stories. We're also a little bit less density with 82 residences and residential per acre, and those are 100 and 109. Here's some interior views of along Mason Lane. This would be looking at looking north along Mason Lane. Underneath is if I'm entering in off of Broad Street. As you can see, there's some retail lining both sides of the street, a lot of street activity, and this is their market square as I had depicted. This is a view back. This is Broad Street out here. This is the cover over Mason Lane. This is the only part of the Mason Lane that is covered, and it's 35 or 40 feet high. We have our market square in here, and again, it's lined with retail. These are apartments, and then the transition here to hotel. Apartments are in this direction. This is the view from the W&OD Trail looking south, and you can see the opening there into Broad Street. We have our portion of our condo building here. This piece here, as it goes down, is part of my apartments. This piece here is part of my hotel, and you can see that the retail does line Northwest Street and turns into our Mason Lane. This is the view from West Broad Street looking through the site, just depicting the sort of grandness or the entry of Mason Lane to Broad Street. This is a view from the corner of Northwest and Broad Street, looking down Broad Street. Here's that opening here, as I'd shown, where the intention here is to certainly line this with a lot of retail with outdoor seating, restaurants, a lot of pedestrian activity along Broad Street as well. This is our condominium building. It faces Park Avenue. As you can see, as I'd mentioned earlier, is that it begins to step down. It's 3 stories here, 4 stories here, 5 here, and this is the 5/1 piece as it transitions to our 5/1 on the rest of the project. Some extra elevations, and sort of to keep things moving quicker, I'm going to try to go through the elevations here quickly. This is the north elevation on West Broad Street. This would be the elevation along Park Avenue here, and then as it bends along Northwest Street. This is the east elevation facing, it's facing the, I guess, the church property. This is the west elevation, as if you were looking off of the straight portion of Northwest Street. This is the another angle. This is looking at the angled portion of Northwest Street, and you can see the condo stepping back down on the Park Avenue side. This gets into more of the retail, the materials of the exterior facade. We can get into that in more detail in the questions and answers portion. I'm going to hand the mic over to Peter right now to talk about the traffic.
Okay. Our traffic consultant's coming in, he's due here around 8 o'clock. So he should be here in time for a bulk of the questions and answers. So I would ask us to maybe hold some of the traffic questions until Will gets here at 8 o'clock. But I'm going to go through quickly some slides that kind of show what we're proposing to do on the oops. on the roads around the project. This is just showing you the project laying down on the site. Whoops. And this is West Broad Street. This is Northwest Street. And this is Park Avenue. This shows the current uses on the site, and these blue marks are the existing access points. So there's an access point there, there, and on around. I think there are 11 access points currently that are full access points on this site. This is our site plan, the Mason Row project. There is an access point here that's full access that takes people into the surface retail parking area only. And this is West Broad Street. This access point into Mason Lane is right in and right out. It's marked with a red asterisk. Then coming up north, West Street, this access point is right in and right out, marked with a red asterisk. This is Mason Lane as it intersects with Park Avenue and Northwest Street, and it's a full access point. And this is a ramp to the P2 garage for residents only that will be key fobbed and gated. And it is a full access point. This is some information about site trips that's in our traffic study. These are the weekday daily trips. Currently, there are about 1,200 trips. With the new project, there would be 4,306 trips. And when you subtract the existing trips on the project, the net new vehicle trips would be 3,106 during the weekdays. And a trip is defined as a vehicle coming into the project, going to a store or what have you, and then the same vehicle leaving the project. So to determine or to get a better understanding of how many vehicles or cars this means, a general rule of thumb is about 50%, so about 1,600 additional cars a day on the streets around the project. And this is a slide that just shows what the traffic study indicates are the amount of cars from the project going on the different streets around the site. So on West Broad Street, going to and from the project, in the AM, 129 vehicle trips, in the PM, 129 vehicle trips. And that's that indication continues along West Broad Street. On South West Street, 30 vehicles in the morning. Whoops. 30 vehicles in the morning and 29 vehicles in the afternoon. On Grove Avenue, 7 vehicles in the morning, 7 vehicles in the afternoon. That's not currently. And then going up this leg of Northwest Street, the traffic study indicates 41 new vehicles in the morning and 39 new vehicles in the evening coming to and from the project after the project's complete. This slide is just to bring up the fact that we understand that there are existing traffic problems in these intersections by this site. This is Park Avenue, Northwest Street. There is excessive vehicular speed here. We all know that. The intersections are poorly aligned, so visibility is difficult for the vehicles, to see people crossing the trail here. And we all know that that's a pretty bad problem. And of course, it makes for a somewhat dangerous crossing for trail users here. And there's really insufficient control, traffic control along this section of Northwest Street. So we are proposing to do the following, or recommending the following changes to this intersection. One, we think that there is a need, and it would be warranted to put a traffic light into this intersection, which we are proposing to do as part of this project. We are also proposing to realign this intersection so Park Avenue would come down, Northwest Street would come down, and the two streets would start to look, the vehicles would be approaching the intersection would be able to look directly at each other. So a significant improvement to line of sight between the drivers of the cars coming to this intersection from either direction. We are inserting a crosswalk across Park Avenue to bring people from the neighborhoods and from the trail into the project. On that point, we had a meeting with the Northern Virginia Park Authority last week, and we're talking now with them about the feasibility, and we think that with some design work that we can bring the trail crossing down so that the trail goers can cross at the intersection, which will make a much safer condition for trail crossers and much easier for people using the intersection to see people crossing the trail. Lastly here, we are looking at creating some lanes to better distribute traffic that's coming and going at this intersection. This intersection also has Mason Lane moving a little bit towards it so that we have a more traditional alignment between Northwest Street and Mason Lane, and again between Northwest Street and Park Avenue. Grove Avenue. Grove Avenue, excessive speeds here along West Street. West Street is pretty wide here, and cars are moving at higher speeds than what the speed limit is for this area, and our study is showing that. There is speeding on Grove Avenue, and our traffic study is showing that as well. There is significant cut-through traffic that's occurring on Grove Avenue, that our study shows that, and of course our neighbors on Grove Avenue have told us a lot about that. And we have a crossing, a trail crossing on Grove Avenue that is off the intersection, which creates certain problems as well, safety problems and crossing recognition problems. So we are working on the problems for Grove Avenue, and this is still a work in progress. We are proposing to put in what's called a pork chop, which is this medium that spreads out as it hits the intersection. And the idea here is to create a midway and to add safety for trail crossers, to have elevation here in the pork chop so that we can put some signage there and people can really recognize that there's a trail crossing here. The lanes due to the pork chop would be narrowing, which would slow down approaching cars to the intersection. And the pork chop, by the nature of its design, restricts people's ability to turn left onto Northwest Street, or for people coming down Northwest Street to turn left on Grove. Our analysis of this intersection indicates that this idea of a pork chop would calm the traffic at this intersection, would help to slow vehicles down, and the fact that there are no left turns being allowed at this intersection would affect some of the queuing that takes place out there and some of the unsafe conditions of making this crossing. This is still a work in progress, though. Some neighbors are concerned about losing the ability to turn left out of here and heading up Northwest Street. Some neighbors are concerned about the inability of being able to turn left as they're approaching Grove Avenue from the south. So it's still a work in progress. And this is West Broad Street and Northwest Street. So this is Northwest Street, Southwest Street, West Broad Street. This intersection, the main issues here are congestion during rush hour, insufficient lanes to distribute the traffic so that you're seeing more queuing than might need to take place at this intersection because of the fact that there are not sufficient lanes and turn lanes to get traffic through this intersection. And there's some issues for crosswalk safety here too. And so we are, right now we're proposing to do a couple of things. We are proposing to add a southbound turn lane as the Northwest Street traffic approaches West Street, so we can get that traffic out of the way of those folks that want to go straight. We are also proposing on the opposite side, a left turn lane for those folks that want to turn into the bank, the Wells Fargo Bank, so that those cars that are, especially in rush hour, that are being delayed making this turn are not creating significant queuing of cars back towards the intersection. And we are also proposing to add striping and also straighten the crosswalks here at this intersection to make it easier for people to see, who are driving, to see where pedestrians are going to be crossing here. This slide tells us a few things about the key intersections around the site. This is Park Avenue, Northwest Street. Right now, this intersection, LOS is a term that means level of service, and it is it just talks about the throughput and the capacity of the intersection. So today it's at a level D. It's still at a level D with future plan project. With this project and the improvements we're planning to do, we do see improvement in this intersection going to a D and C. And you can see also here at Grove and West Street, the existing at C and E. We think with the improvements, the study is indicating that we can improve that intersection to an A and B. And then, of course, Northwest Street and West Broad Street, it's at a D and E right now. With the future growth in the city, you're looking at an E and an F. And then with the proposals that we have for the intersections and the streets around the site, the study shows that we can improve the throughput of that intersection to an E, a full E. And these are just some additional proposed improvements that we have in mind in addition to what I explained in the slides. This is, okay, well, you need to rush me. Okay, this is just describing how the parking works on the site. We have a total of 727 parking spaces between the residential and the commercial. We are asking for a 20% reduction from what the code requires for these uses, and that's due to our proximity to Metro and to public transportation and the traffic demand management program that we are putting together for this project. And this is just a diagram of the parking underground, under the surface. Access comes in here. This is okay. And that's the following parking below. This is some graphics for the fiscal impact of the project. This bronze area is part of the pie that is for real estate and property taxes, about $2 million coming from this project each year to the city, gross. This is about $700,000 gross in taxes coming from the retail from this project, $365,000 in taxes coming from the hotel, just the hotel for this project, and then there's some incidentals. The other side in blue is the projected expenses that the city would incur to support this project. This light blue area, the schools, they are estimating $1.1 million a year in additional school costs. And then there are other things like public safety, parks, human resources, and administration that makes the rest of this pie chart. The totals are gross revenues, $3.4 million, total expenditures, $1.7 million, And then with that combination, Mason Row is projected to produce net annual revenue to the city of about $1.76 million. And this is just a graph to show the net fiscal impact of Mason Row compared to the existing uses and properties today as they sit. So Mason Row, again, at 1.7 million. The existing uses are producing a net fiscal impact to the city of about 192 or about $200,000 a year. And this chart here is a comparison of Mason Row in the light blue and its projected net fiscal impact to the city compared with all the other mixed-use projects and apartment and condominium projects that have been improved and are operational in the city. Some are under construction, so Tenor Hill, Rushmark, Northgate, and the others.
Peter, we ready?
Yep, all done.
Thank you. I'd like to welcome everybody here. The purpose of this meeting is to hear from our boards and commissions. We'd like them to address their area of expertise, but if they have questions on other things, if the library board wants to talk about traffic instead of books, that's great. If the AAB wants to talk about environmental, that's fine too. But we would like, as each group speaks, and we're not only asking the chair to speak, but any of the members of the boards or commission who wants to ask questions, to identify themselves. This is not a meeting that we're going to be having the general public speak. The general public can address the Planning Commission at our regular meeting, which is immediately following this. So I understand we have some speaker slips for that to happen already, and we'll take all the general public questions at that time. But right now, we'd like to focus on boards and commissions because that's what this meeting is all about. So we're going to start with the Architectural Advisory Board, and if the developers want to come up here and sit, they will answer your questions. And if the boards and commissions will give their name and which commission they're on before they ask the question, that would really be helpful. Is anybody here from the AAB? Okay. If you'd come up to the microphone at the podium and identify yourself, that would be great. And we're not putting a time limit on your questions, but just remember there are a lot of people here, so we don't want to go on too long.
Okay. Third time. I'm Chuck Anderson. I'm one of the members of the AAB, I guess the only one here tonight. We actually had a very good meeting with the development team just 2 weeks ago. Looked at preliminary design for Mason Row, gave just preliminary comments on that, are looking forward to seeing, we hope, a more developed plan in November. I know that several members of the AAB were reluctant to dig in and provide detailed analysis on the preliminary renderings that we saw 2 weeks ago. I showed up tonight simply to continue to hear the latest thinking, latest responses to the feedback received. I might have questions a bit later in the evening. I don't have any right now.
Okay, that's great. If you do during any part, just raise your hand and we'll recognize you. Thanks, Chuck. Is there a representative from Catch? Barb?
Hi, I'm Barb Cram, and I live at 212 East Jefferson Street, but you don't care where I live. You're supposed to say that in front of all the others. Catch is a City of Arts, Theater, Culture, and History. It's a group that was an advisory to Council Advisory Board, and it consists of our arts, theater, culture, and historical groups. And We've been around since 2009. We're very concerned to integrate our arts, our culture, and I've got some questions related to that. As far as culture goes, being right next to the bike trail, I didn't see any parking lots for bikes, which I hope that we have a lot of bikes there. And I'd like to see a designated parking area that's very obvious and can be seen from the trail so that you're inviting customers for those retail spaces, which I know they would be happy about. Also, as far as the arts go, I don't know what the intention is for Market Square, but I would think that having opportunities there for small performances by street performers, you know, for outdoor dining pleasure, and having opportunities for plein air painting and things like this where we have people engaged with what's going on. And that's just a sampling. I mean, we can come up with a lot more ideas for that. Theater, I know that there was some discussion about having potentially a tenant that would be a theater. And I know that there are several that would love to have a place where we could have a public meeting or public event that would be held in a theater when it wasn't doing a showing, you know, which I know in a lot of neighborhood theaters that occurs. One more left, history. I would personally like to see, I love George Mason. I think he's a really special guy, but he never lived in Falls Church. And I think we have a lot of things named Mason, and I really think since the train station was there, and that's part of the reason the city developed as it did, that maybe even considering calling it Falls Church Station or having another option there that has some more of historical reference to what our city is and how we got this way would be fun, and it would also help sort of guide some of the amenities perhaps with, you know, a theme. And not saying that that's the only idea out there, but that's just one to make a suggestion. And since I've covered the city of arts, theater, culture, and history, I think I pretty much have it. I just wanted to say that I realize there's a lot of work and drawings and creativity that goes into this, and we would really like to throw the ideas out and have the architect and the designers, you know, who are the creative end of it, you know, do their thing and make a suggestion. We had a wonderful experience with Richard Rose on the Lincoln at Tinner Hill, because it has been changed from the Reserve to the Lincoln. And that was, you know, it wasn't a lengthy process, but it was a few meetings where a few people got together and we really worked through the historical references so that it has an important impact for the new residents and the old residents to tie all that together. So I want to thank you for having this meeting, and Catch, thank you.
Thank you, Barbara. Is there anybody else from any of the members of Catch who would like to ask questions? Okay, we'll move on to CACT, and now that the traffic consultant is here, you'll be able to answer all the hard questions.
Good evening. I'm Paul Baldino from the Citizens Advisory Committee on Transportation. We too had a good meeting with the group just last week, and we're formulating specific comments. And I'll take the privilege of kind of rehashing a couple of those here tonight, and maybe you can help us a little more. One of the things we had concerns about was sidewalk width on West Street. As I understand it, the sidewalk width on Broad will be the standard 20 feet, but on West it's going to be something like 14 feet or less. We think West now is becoming a major retail street, at least in this section, and we would like to see something comparable to Broad Street. We're very concerned, while 20 feet and 14 feet sound very wide, once other street features such as outdoor dining are there, we're going to have some very narrow pedestrian areas that combined with any landscaping that occurs along the curb. So that's one thing we'd like to see addressed, a wider sidewalk on West. Second, we'd like to see a better connection to the WNOD. More and more that's becoming a commuter route in the city, and the kind of residents that are likely to live in your complex as well as the others that are under construction are people who are going to use it also. We'd also like to hear addressed a little better your thoughts about how to handle bike traffic leaving the site and going elsewhere other than the WNOD. The city has recently painted sharrows, as you know, on Park Avenue. They stop right there at the intersection. And we're thinking more and more that people are going to want to use bicycles as transportation. Moving east on, or further north on West Street, into Arlington, there's bicycle lanes. We have no connection to them at present. And it makes a great deal of sense to go south on West Street to connect to ultimately Washington Boulevard and points west. The last issue I wanted to bring up is the issue of the loading dock that would serve the site. As presented, we have some real concerns that that's going to be inadequate. And in terms of how the large truck traffic is going to move in and out, we'd like to hear a little better exposition of that. We kind of left with a great deal of uncertainty when you spoke with us last week. On the whole, on a personal level, we did not, our committee did not take a vote up or down. I was very impressed with it. I think this is the kind of development the city is looking for. It's certainly got positive revenues for us, and I wish you well, but we have some, we and others have some issues, so thank you.
Do you want to get a response on this, or no?
I would love to.
Okay. We want to give the opportunity
So
to
I
respond.
kind of rolled, the first issue was sidewalk width.
You are right. You're right in that currently on West Street, we have a 14-foot setback, which is not the same as the 20-foot setback we have on West Broad. So that's something that we will take a look at. We hear your concern. Unfortunately, I don't have an answer for you today since we left our meeting last week. But that's something that, we've heard the concerns from the Transportation Commission, and so we'll take a look at that.
My second question was around the looking for a stronger connection to the WNOD.
Yeah, so we actually had a really good meeting with the Northern Virginia Regional Park Authority the day after we met with you. And it looks like there will be an opportunity for us to relocate the WNOD crossing at the intersection of West Park and Northwest Street. And so we're hoping that that will help the connection from our site into the WNOD trail. Does that help? At this intersection. So when we propose a signal to this intersection, we're going to work with the relocation of this trail to come closer to the intersection for better visibility. And in addition, we're also looking at adding a sidewalk along Northwest Street here.
That would be good. Yeah.
Yes, to help both everyone from coming down from Grove Avenue to bring them into the site, and also for people to get to the trail from our site. So that's something that was a positive outcome of our meeting with the Park Authority.
Would you have a crosswalk from the new sidewalk?
Yes. So
That's
we've
that's something
also,
else.
so we're also looking at adding crosswalks at the 4 intersection legs. Yes, on Grove Avenue. So we're looking at adding a crosswalk and finding the safest connection for that, since we did hear that there are pedestrians coming down Grove Avenue who use this area here to cross today, even though there is no crosswalk.
Have you given further thought to, I believe you have committed to identifying a site where a bike sharing station could be? Have you given any further thought to that?
We have not placed a location, but it is something that they've committed to providing. So we'll definitely be locating an area on the site. And, we've kind of had moving pieces along the way for this first floor retail area and for the surface parking and the Mason Lane. But the bike parking is certainly something that we're going to be providing along the site, and plenty of it.
Okay. My last question was around the loading dock. As you can see, and we talked about last week,
Right.
doesn't seem to be a readily identifiable turnaround place.
Yes, so we'll explore that as well. Again, unfortunately, we haven't been able to look at that since our meeting with you last week, but that's something that we have listed as an item for us to look at.
All right, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Paul. Is there anyone else from your committee here who would like to speak from the commission?
Hi, Kent Taylor with the CACT, and I'll be quick since he covered most of the things. Bus stop, any thoughts to incorporating a bus stop?
Yes, the existing bus stop is out here on West Broad Street, and so we will be providing the bus shelter that the city has approved in that location. That's one of the voluntary
The bus shelter would be added to a drawing at some point.
Yes, that's correct.
And the TDM, I don't want to hear the whole thing, but what are you talk about reducing the need for parking by 20%. So what are the big bullets in your TDM that's going to do that?
Well, we are working on a number of things for the customers of the uses and the people living here to use mass transit. We are looking at the possibility of doing a bike share here on the property. We are looking at, as was mentioned a little bit earlier, providing for bike storage and really encouraging a lot of folks that live in the property or people visiting the stores to use bikes and have a place to put their bikes when they're on the property. We're looking at car sharing, such things as Zipcar. We're looking at programs for carpooling. There are really neat software packages and management systems to really manage carpooling so that people know when there is a ride available or when they have to change who they normally carpool with, and that can all be automated, and that's a program that we are exploring right now. We are going to have a shuttle for the hotel to and from the Metro. It'll be a shuttle dedicated to the hotel customers. We are looking into the possibility of a shuttle to the Metro for the residents. That is something that is going to require a lot more time to determine how much a dedicated shuttle just for the residential would be used, because we have a bus stop right there at the project. So that's still kind of a work in progress. We're going to have charging stations for electric cars, at least one, maybe two charging stations. I'm trying to think what else, Will, that we have. Yeah, as part of the plan, the residents will be paying for their parking spaces, so they will have a separate parking area completely separated from the commercial. And there will be some sharing of parking between the hotel and the commercial, being that a hotel uses its parking at certain times of the day and evening, and not so much on weekends. And commercial users, there are commercial users that will use a lot of parking on weekends and a lot of parking during the day. So we're working on a park sharing program that we will incorporate into the leases of the project. So those are some of the things I think that I think I've got a lot of them, and we're still working on that, and we are looking to finalize that here in short order.
Okay, last question.
Sure.
You talked about, and I'm assuming that taxi access would be on Mason Lane for the hotel. Okay, you mentioned maybe thinking about a resident shuttle to the Metro. Would that be in addition to one that the hotel would offer? Is that going to?
We're looking at the possibility of doing one in addition to the hotel. But, surprisingly, there's a debate out there in the mixed-use world in the Washington metro area about the dedicated shuttles for residential. In some of the mixed-use projects, they're not being used very much. And so it kind of varies with each project. It's not so easy to say because you're a half a mile from the metro, that a shuttle service should go in here. That's something that probably will have to be looked at as we have the residents occupied and start determining how many of them are using the bus, how many of them are walking, how many of them are riding bikes, how many of them are actually driving to the metro and would prefer a private service, a shuttle. So that particular part of the TDM will be a work in progress, probably until we get through the first occupancy and understand it better.
Thanks for your time.
Thank you. Anybody else from the CACT wishes to question? Okay, well, Economic Development Authority, is there anyone? I didn't see Mike here, so is anyone else from the Economic Development Authority here? Okay, I guess you've answered all their questions. Environmental Services Council.
Good evening. I'm Tim Stevens. I'm chair of the Environmental Services Council. And one of our major concerns is greenhouse gas emissions. And as you no doubt know, biggest source of those are buildings and vehicular transportation. So we're pleased to see that you're going to aim for LEED Silver. We'd like to encourage you to achieve as many of those points as possible from the engineering and atmospherics part of the scorecard. And if you've given any thought to how you're going to achieve those points and can share that at an early stage, that would be certainly of interest. You mentioned electric charging stations, and I was looking at the voluntary concessions document that only mentioned one, and I was just curious whether at this point you're planning just for one station for the entire complex, or perhaps that's one for each of the major components. We'd certainly encourage you to think about more. As you probably know, it's National Drive Electric Week this week, and there's something like 250,000 electric vehicles that have been sold in the U.S. A little bit slower in Northern Virginia, but we will catch on to that trend. And certainly, since buildings are going to be here for a long time, I think it makes sense to anticipate that trend and kind of look forward. And even if you're not going to be putting that many actual stations in, if you can put the conduit in so that you can facilitate those arrangements as demand materializes, that's something certainly that's a lot more affordable. And particularly for people that are going to be living in the condos and apartments, that transition is going to occur over time as they move to electric vehicles, and it would be a shame to find out 5-10 years down the road that there's just insufficient facilities. So I'll leave it at that at this point. Any information that you can share as far as the number of EV charging stations, we'd like to know that. There are a couple of other members of the ESC here who may have questions as well. Thank you.
Oh, Peter?
Hi, I'm Peter Adrians with the Environmental Services Council, and a couple of questions. Have you considered a green roof or any kind of solar energy collection on the roofs? And also, well, let's start with that one. Okay.
Part of our best management practices treatment will be green roof. And so in addition to the green roof, we're also doing urban bioretention planters, which are essentially, they capture the roof runoff before they enter the storm sewer system. And the planters are pretty much your, the planters you have at home. It's like a box that has the soil media that's specified to specifically treat the roof runoff before it enters the storm sewer system.
Mm-hmm. I was curious about trees on the interior in the Market Square area. Very much like, say, the Spectrum building has that center area with some trees. It's a nice area to sit. And if you had trees on the inside, it might really be a nice draw. Have you considered that?
Yes, it's definitely something we're considering. We are still developing, and that is something that we've had in other designs where even though there's an underground garage level, we are able to provide enough soil depth in the plaza area so that we can install trees in that landscape area, even if there's a garage underneath.
And I guess my other question was just about solar on the roof. Have you even considered it?
We have not considered it at this point in time, but we're aware that it is, a green building equivalent that we can look into, obviously. But to that end, when Antoinette had mentioned that the green roof, more than likely the residual of that roof, if it's not green, would end up being a cool roof, more than likely. And that's another point that we would probably more than likely achieve.
Okay, thank you.
Anyone else on environmental services? Okay, we'll move on to the Historic Architectural Review Board. Anyone here representing that board? No questions? Okay. Thank you. Thank you very much for being here, though. Housing Commission. Representatives from the Housing Commission. Human Services Advisory Council. Library. I know we have people from the library. Brad.
I'm Bradley Gerdand, and I chair the Library Board of Trustees, and with me are several board members and also as our guest, the library director. And I'm here not to talk with you about books, but rather bricks. And in so doing, I'd like to talk about proffers. The proffer that we proposed or recommended or actually requested of you differs so substantially from the number that you came back to us with. There's such a broad gulf between those two numbers, they may as well be different planets. So I wanted to talk with you just for a brief moment about how we arrived at the number we submitted and perhaps what you may have thought of that number. When we submitted the numbers, we used a standard formula that was adopted by the state government for use by public libraries across the Commonwealth in the event of projects such as this. The number is important to us because we outgrew our existing building about 5 to 6 years ago. And we love the idea that people might be moving into the city because we're a service-based organization, so we always appreciate serving the public. The issue for us is going to be that what we've seen in the recent past is every time a large project such as yours opens, the impact on us is almost immediate, literally speaking, on day 2. And again, that's a good thing for us because we welcome the public. It's a bad thing for us when the proffer that we hoped for is so different from what you offered. We wondered whether you had an idea of the characteristics of this particular library. If you're thinking about a static library that's kind of a quiet place, people read books, that is part of what we do, but it's just only a small part. We have several hundred daily visitors in this single-site library. It's only 4 blocks from your project. We know for a fact that a lot of your residents are going to use it, and they're going to walk. The walking is a nice part. So what we were hoping to talk with you about, or at least try to get you to reconsider, is the proffer that you offered. We'd be happy to give you information about the standard formula we used, the numbers that we plugged into it, the daily usage of the library, anything that you might could use that would maybe more fully inform your thinking. We'd be very happy to supply you that.
Yeah, we'd like to get that from you if we can.
Great.
My wife went to the library with our son for the first time about a week ago.
I'm glad she told you that. It's the only thing that you might need to keep in mind is the fact that it's public programs that tend to be our bailiwick. That tends to be what people really like us for. So it tends to draw a lot of people.
Well, we'll look at the information that you have, and we'll take a look at that issue and think it through some more. You know, for us, it's just a matter of all the different things that the city would like us to do and that we need to do, whether it's traffic, whether it's library,
Parks, et cetera.
streets, parks. It's all you know, it's a basket of benefits. And so we have to just manage to make sure that we can afford to do everything. But I think it would be really helpful to get your information, those numbers, and for us to have a better understanding.
We'll gladly
I'd
get
like to
those
come
you.
by there and see what my wife saw, because she came back glowing. So there's something going on there.
We'd love to have you.
Okay. Yeah,
Thank
if you can get that to me, I'd like to have that so we can review that.
We'll make sure we do.
Okay, I'll give you my card.
Thanks.
Anyone else from the library wants to reinforce? No? Okay. Anyone here from Recreation and Parks Advisory Board? Tree Commission? Dennis? No questions? Okay. Planning Commission is going to save their questions for our work session afterwards. Any representative from the Village Preservation and Improvement Society? Keith, do you have any questions? No?
Thank you, Keith Thurston, Village Preservation Improvement Society. We had initially got a deadline of September 26th, and the board is working towards that. We do have a number of issues that are already being talked about here. I can't think of ones that are unique to what you're hearing from the other boards and commissions. But we also were very concerned about, I think perhaps one of them that we have in there is about massing and external architecture. And you comment publicly about thinking about Virginia architecture, and we noticed that the palette has gone that way. Now we'd like to see the architecture itself, and we have some recommendations for sites that you might want to see that we think are that way. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone here from the Chamber of Commerce? I'm getting down to the bottom of the list here. I think that's it. Peter? Yeah? With us immediately afterwards? No, on the 26th. The 20th. That's, they need to, we sent it out, and they'll do written comments, so you'll see, yeah. No, and the comments will probably come in way before that. It's just that some people, their board meetings are at different times, so they didn't get approval. Okay. If there are individual board members that would like to ask questions before we turn this back over to the developers, just in case they have some further comments. Okay. All right. Peter, do you have anything more that you want to talk about? Okay. And I noticed the City Council has gone downstairs, so they don't want to speak. Well, I guess.
So we can take a recess and
Okay. That's what,
re-adjourn at 8:30, 10 minutes.
okay. So instead of waiting till 9 o'clock to take a recess and then convening our meeting, we'll take a recess now, and we'll reconvene at 8:30 for the formal public meeting of the Planning Commission. Thank you very much. You're relieved, are you? Okay, we're going to start. I'd like to call the Monday, September 15th, 2014 meeting and public hearing of the City of Falls Church Planning Commission to order. Ms. G, would you call the roll when you get a minute?
Thank you for waiting. Ms. Hockenberry? Here. Mr. Meeks?
Here.
Mr. Rankin?
Here.
Ms. Rogers?
Here?
Mr. Wodiska?
Here.
Mr. Dejean and Ms. Teets are absent.
We got an email earlier saying Mr. John was going to be a little bit late, so he may still be on his way. Do we have a motion for the adoption of the agenda?
I so move.
Second.
Moved and seconded to adopt the agenda. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Motion is adopted. We will now have receipt of petitions from the audience. Ms. G, do you have speaker slips? Okay. These have been submitted, are presented to me in order that the people, what? Okay, I'm sorry. I'll be calling people in order as to how they presented, when they presented the speaker slips, and we will ask that you limit your remarks to 3 minutes. We won't turn off the mic, but we would give you
But
this.
we'll look at you sternly.
And I think most of these comments are on the Broad and West development. If people want to speak on something else, that's fine too. You're allowed to do that during this particular part of the meeting. So we're going to start with Kathy Kleiman.
Great. Okay.
Name and address, please.
Absolutely. Hello, everyone. My name is Kathy Kleiman, and I live at 203 Grove Avenue. And we're here at a very important time and on a very tight time frame. The Spectrum Development Project impacts Broad, West, Grove, and Park very directly, and the whole city as well. Your close review of this project is critical and appreciated. I'm here to introduce tonight a series of comments that will be shared by my neighbors. We have attended the developers' meetings, walked the site many times, and met regularly to talk about the project. We've researched the materials new and old, especially the ones so recently posted. We have deep concerns. The project has changed, and it's changed a lot, but we still have deep concerns about it, and ones we'd really like to work with you on. Concerns about traffic, street parking, the pork chop, the height and the massing. I will let my neighbors speak to these issues in more detail, but with the pork chop, for example, there's no left turn for emergency vehicles. There's no left turn for residents going in and out even at non-rush hour times when that's not a difficult thing to do. We ask for your assistance in solving these problems, even as we consider this enormous building and adding so many new residents to the city. One thing I did want to ask you is whether your second review might be delayed till October 22nd. There's a lot of material here, and there's a lot of work to do. The last thing any of us want to do is face a rush. The developer wanted the clock to start ticking with first reading, but suddenly it seems like a clock in speed chess. We seem to be banging everywhere. Let's, with the Jewish holidays coming up and many, many other important fall events, let's give this project the time and these new proposals the time and consideration they need with a fair time frame to the community. So thank you for all your hard work ahead. Much appreciated.
Thank you, Kathy. Kim Callahan.
Hello, my name is Kim Callahan, and I live at 918 Park Avenue, which is directly across the street from the proposed Mason Row project. And I would just like to start off and say I'm not against development. I'm a professional civil engineer and worked as a developer for many years, so I understand that change and progress is necessary, and I don't think that redeveloping an existing community necessarily has to destroy the character of the community, but in order to avoid doing that, you have to make sure that that new development ties in to the existing surrounding community, which is where I think this project is falling, this iteration of the project at least is falling short, especially on the Park Avenue side. You know, right now I look at a white old single-family home with a white picket fence, and that's going to turn into a parking garage. I'm going to go from a single-family home to a parking garage, and that's horrible. The traffic that the residential garage is going to generate on Park will just exacerbate a problem that's already there. There's traffic due to the school and the church, which I'm not complaining about, because when I moved in, they were already there and I knew what I was getting into. But when you add more traffic to an area that already has problems, we're not going to be able to get in and out of our driveways. I think the most recent transportation study said that the traffic along Park was going to back up 300 feet, and that's about 5 homes worth of driveways that won't be able to get in and out during the AM and PM peak periods. The second reason that a parking garage is unacceptable on a residential street facing residential homes is because when the cars are driving out of the garage, their headlights are going to be shining directly into mine and my neighbors' living rooms. And that's a big change from a single-family home. My other concern are the condos along Park Avenue. The original version of the plan showed 2 single-family homes, and I understand that the city council wanted to change those to condos to bring in more revenue to the city. And the second iteration of the plan, at least that the Park Avenue residents saw, showed condos that at least looked like townhomes. They tied in to the existing development, but now it's been changed to a parking garage entrance and kind of a flat front 5-story condo building. It needs more articulation. It needs to look more residential. Park Avenue is very pedestrian, and I hate to ruin that pedestrian quality of that street, especially when that's the whole draw to this project, is the pedestrian experience and getting people into the site. So I'd just like to ask that the city and the developer work together to really not destroy the character and the nature of that Park Avenue neighborhood. And if this were across the street from your home, would it be acceptable to go from this to this? Thank you.
Thank you.
That was 3 minutes. That was excellent.
Bob Ford.
I think she practiced.
Hi, I'm Bob Ford, 910 Park Avenue, and my concern is parking on Park. What we're having is 2 magnets for vehicles that will exist on that 900 block. At one end is a church and a school. At the other end will be this large complex. We're not against the complex, but please be sensitive to issues that we have. Many of the residents on that 900 block, at least the north side of the street, depend on street parking. They do not have driveways, so they have to park on the street. And currently there are no restrictions on parking. And one of the issues we have is there's a church that has services all day on Sunday, significant part of Saturdays, twice a day during the weekdays. Then we have St. James School, which has morning AM drop-offs and then afternoon pickups, and most of the people park on Park Avenue waiting to pick up their children. Then we have employees for the facility across the street where parking is available, but because of convenience, they use the street. And they do not park typically on the same side of the street as the church. They choose the side of the street where the residents live. And then we'll have Mason Road coming in, and we appreciate the developers working with us to try to get some concessions made to help us. The solutions we would like to propose is that the north side of the street be restricted to resident-only parking 24/7. And we would like to see the south side of the street have restrictions of a 2-hour time limit from 6 a.m. in the morning till midnight. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Ford. It's rare that somebody comes up with a solution when they're giving us the problem, but so we appreciate that. Joanne Fuchs?
Hi.
Hi.
I'm Joanne Fuchs, and I'm a terrible public speaker. And I wrote something that's a lot longer
That's
than
okay.
5 minutes. So
Don't worry, we'll...
You accept like written statements, and I'll just kind of
We certainly
do it
will.
off the cuff. Joanne Fuchs, I live at 920 Park Avenue, directly across the project, as does Kim. And of course, my major concern is really traffic. I mean, even the developer tonight said that the traffic would at least double. And I think it's more likely to quadruple or who knows how much. I know the developer's hope is that they're going to attract millennials, that everyone's going to seek alternative modes of transportation. Okay, maybe, pipe dream, who knows? So, I mean, to be forward-thinking, I think we need to try and really get some traffic calming measures into the proposal. And I know that it is a work in progress, and I believe that, you know, they've been working with Grove. We haven't been as active on Park, but the neighbors have all thrown around ideas. One of them was to make Park Avenue a cul-de-sac, cut it off on West Street. Another proposal was to make it go east, you know, one-way traffic only. I don't know what's going to work. I'm not an expert, but traffic right now is a nightmare. I mean, it's not just, I mean, I can't back out of my driveway. And I go to work on Sunday morning, so forget that. And an additional thousands of cars? And I guess my other major concern, like Kim's as well, is the new cut-through. And it will become a cut-through from Broad to Park Avenue, so people don't have to deal with the light. I mean, I don't like the idea of the lights coming into my house and losing my privacy and all that thing, but I'm sure maybe there's a better way. I mean, Park Avenue is a residential street, Broad isn't, West isn't, so why have the traffic dump all onto Park Avenue? Is there a reason that I don't know about? There are other streets. And finally, I want to say that I am in support of change. I like the idea. I'm an urban dweller at heart, and I love the idea of walking and taking advantage of all these great amenities and restaurants. But I'm going to be one of the lucky ones because I get to walk there and not have to fight traffic and not have to worry about a place to park. So that's it. Thank you.
Thank you, and we'd love to have your comments if you want to submit them.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, Joanne. Mark Massey.
Hi,
Hi, Mark.
I am Mark Massey. Before I start my planned comments, I want
Address,
to...
please.
Yes, 203 Grove Avenue.
Thank you.
I must admit that this idea of 7 additional trips up and down Grove Avenue is, I think it's ludicrous, to use the correct word. I'm not sure where they got that one from. All right. First, I want to say I agree. I don't usually read from prepared comments, but I'm doing it this time. I agree with what Kathy, Ann, Alex, and Keith said. I'm here to speak about traffic. Traffic on Grove is one of the key problems in the neighborhood. In fact, my much-loved Saab automobile was totaled last week by a driver cutting through the area. I loved that automobile. I think it saved the drivers who hit me life, the way it crushed for her. The proposed development is likely to make this much, much worse. We've had a number of open meetings in the neighborhood that have included discussing ways to deal with the traffic. Tonight, I'm here to propose a solution that will work for all of the existing residents of the Grove Avenue area while still allowing full access to school buses and emergency vehicles. In our most recent neighborhood meeting, this approach was agreed upon as having support by the neighborhood, or at least many people in the neighborhood. I can't say that every single person. I believe the time is now for this to be implemented. The idea is actually simple and is already in use in other areas of Falls Church. Simply limit access on Grove Avenue during rush hour to residents of Grove Avenue, including Fairfax County residents, as well as the adjacent streets in the West End neighborhood, including Chestnut, Spruce, and Birch. In other words, the people who live in that community are the people who can have access. This simple solution to cut through traffic was practiced, or is practiced throughout the city and in light of the speed, volume of traffic, and cut through nature of traffic, they should be practiced on Grove Avenue too. Okay, specifically, solutions. This I've got written here someplace where it's been practiced. Oh, here it is. as well, simply limit access on Grove Avenue during rush hour to residents of Grove Avenue as well. No, that's not where it is. Oh, well. I'll find that for you and give it to you. Okay.
Well, you know, you can always write us later if you've forgotten something.
Okay. Post and have the police enforce do not enter 7 to 9 a.m. except by permit at Grove and West. Post do not enter 4 to 7 p.m. except by permit at the City Line and Grove Avenue. Grove Avenue is part Fairfax County and part Falls Church. There are already similar signs in place in Cherry Street, Berry Street, and Roosevelt in the city if you want something to compare it to and show there is an existing precedent.
Mr. Massey, you're running up against your 3 minutes.
I've got 3 more paragraphs.
That's a little bit too much.
1 more paragraph. It is important to note that there is no space to enforce the existing evening turn restrictions without creating gridlock on West Street. In other words, what's there now they can't enforce. This approach allows ample space between the City Line and West Street for enforcement stops of violating drivers. You can issue permits to local residents. Thank you.
Thank you very much. The next one is Alex. Alex Garo, wait, let me try. Garoxis? Baroxis?
My name's Alex Baroxis. I live at
Baroxis.
301 Grove Avenue, commonly called the Bypass. I want to talk about parking, not just on Grove Avenue, but also on Park Avenue and the surrounding area. We know something's going to be built. We don't exactly know what. It's a plan that's evolving. Really don't like the idea of parking permits, but I think it's going to come down to where it's absolutely necessary that we have some sort of parking restrictions in place for Grove Avenue. And that pretty much cuts to the chase. I don't like the idea of the reduction of parking places in the proposed development from 320 down to 253. Residents now are going to have to pay for their parking. If I was a resident, I'd look for other parking options. If I had to pay for parking, I know what I'm going to do. And that's going to look for a free option. There are parking restrictions elsewhere in the city of Falls Church, and I'd like to see them put in place on Grove Avenue. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Ann Polirka?
My name is Ann Polifka, and I live at 1005 Jennifer Lane, which is right off of Grove Avenue. So I am part of the group of neighbors that are speaking from Grove. And I'd like to note, while I agree with all the traffic issues, we in the area are also concerned that this is not just a traffic issue, that the size of the development is too massive and disproportionate for the neighborhood. And specifically, we would like to urge you not to grant the special exception of a 30-foot building height bonus for any building facing residential property, specifically the northwest bend past West Grove and to the intersection of Park. I live in the townhomes that most completely face the proposed building, and the proposed buildings will be towering over my townhome and the homes along Grove. The bike path does not mitigate this effect. A change in the surface of the outside of the building does not mitigate this effect. A lane through it does not mitigate this effect. Really, the only means of reducing this effect is to have them to develop a project which is lower on that side of the development. I don't know if this entails moving the hotel, if it entails putting only commercial there, but we really feel like this is just disproportionate and too massive for the area. And we want a design that is less massive and more considerate of the residential character of our area. Thank you.
Thank you. James Morrison.
Hi, I'm James Morrison. I'm here on behalf of the Steeples Court Homeowners Association.
Mr. Morrison, as a representative of the Steeples Homeowners Association, you get 2 extra minutes.
Oh, okay. Thank you. I have to remember that.
Yeah.
We have several concerns I just wanted to repeat here. We've discussed them with many of you before, and just want to make sure that they were actively considered. We live on a cul-de-sac which comes out onto West. It's the edge of our street is about 60 yards from the edge of the development area, so it's quite close. What's happening now is that traffic on West at rush hours blocks our street pretty much an hour or so at a time in the morning and the afternoon. We're very concerned that when you start adding a lot of volume of traffic to that, the people on the street are not going to be able to get in and out. One thing you might consider is just some kind of signage to tell people not to block the street. I don't know what else could be done, but you know, that's kind of a minimum thing for us that we can get in and out. The second thing that we're concerned about is making the whole intersection of those 3 streets of Grove and Park and West safer for pedestrians and bicyclists and cars. The angle at which the Old Dominion Trail crosses West is very acute, and so the sight lines are not very good if you're in a car and somebody comes along rapidly on a bicycle, or a pedestrian is not being too aware of cars. It seems to us that this is an accident waiting to happen. We have a lot of kids who use the trail going to and from school. You're going to add a lot of cars. As time has gone by the last few years, we've added a lot of pedestrians, a lot of bicyclists, and right now it's pretty chaotic. It's just a matter of whether the pedestrians and the cars see one another. Rather than waiting until there's a serious injury or a fatality, we would like to see the city think through this a little further. One thing that occurs to us is perhaps the optimal solution is for the city to work with the developer and maybe work with the Northern Virginia Regional Park Authority, which controls that trail, to think about another overpass like the one that goes over Route 7 that would allow the cars to go under and the pedestrians and the bicyclists to go over and greatly eliminate the danger of this intersection. The third point that we wanted to mention was the water problem on West. There's a very old sewer pipe that runs behind our homes and under the street. It can't accommodate the volume of water that falls because if you look at a topological map, that's the lowest point from Mount Daniel right there. And that's where the water backs up. At the moment, because of this problem, we have water that comes within a few inches of our living rooms after a heavy rain as it backs up along the back of our houses. The city has promised to fix the storm drain under West because, among other things, it causes West to cover up with water during a heavy rain. That's kind of a nuisance and unpleasant now. If you add a lot of traffic, it could become a real traffic problem, a major traffic problem. So since the city is going to be replacing that anyway under the street, maybe we could replace that storm drain underneath West as a part of this project. Perhaps the developer could help with it, or the city could just accelerate its schedule. But that is something that needs some attention because as more houses are going in on Lincoln, the impervious surface is increasing, and the water is going to back up more after these rains. It's not a problem that's going to solve itself. Something's going to have to happen. So it just seems like that ties in closely enough with the project and the need for more traffic on West that it ought to be considered as a part of that process. So again, in short, our 3 requests as you move forward with this project is: 1, please do not block our street, allow cars to get in and out. Secondly, make the pedestrian and bicyclists and cars mesh safer at that intersection. I might add that on that one, that the developers are promoting this as a bicycle-friendly development. They're trying to attract people in who use the bike trail and who are pedestrians on it. It's even more reason to try to fix this problem. And thirdly, the stormwater problem on West. So if you would, please pay attention to those as you move forward with this project. Our homeowners association will be most grateful.
Thank you, Mr. Morrison. Have you, I know that our Public Works Department has been discussing that with regard to this particular project. Have you talked to them?
Yes, we
I'm sure
have
you have
on-
in the past, so.
Are you talking about the path now, or are you talking about the stormwater?
No, I said in the past. I know you've talked.
The path.
In the past. I'm talking about the stormwater.
We have raised the issue before. I can't say that we've ever gotten any clear answer on it.
Okay, well, in all this paper, I did see a report showing stormwater problems, so we'll take that into consideration and certainly discuss it.
When we raised it a couple of years ago, they said that it was on the list and it was 3 to 5 years out, so we're just saying that maybe you might want to accelerate it a little bit in view of the increased traffic coming up on West.
Okay, thank you for your suggestions. Keith Thurston. Keith Thurston.
It's the other one. This is the, speaking, I plan to make Keith Thurston 1015 Birch Street and part of the neighborhood discussion. And one of the issues that we say that are very interrelated is parking and traffic. So we're opposed to the waiver for the 20% reduction in parking for the site, because what we believe will happen, well, it's been mentioned before by others, is folks will try to do parking off-site, especially weekend visitors and during busy times. And they'll be looking for available free street parking spaces. So you're going to get the orbiting effect of people driving around looking for that precious parking space that they can drop into. So by having adequate parking on the site, that will reduce some of the parking issues and traffic issues that are off-site. Mr. Massey was speaking, one of the points that he was going to make was that we're opposed to the pork chop, that we think the pork chop really cuts off the neighborhood and makes it impossible to access Allison Heights from this part of the city. It forces you to go out to Broad and come back around. So we think that the answer is what he articulated, that there's no resident-only entrance to that intersection up Grove Avenue during morning rush and afternoon rush, just as they have on Cherry, Berry, and Roosevelt. So there can be a median there if we want to make it a little bit safer for the bicyclists crossing the path there. But the pork chop that forces the turns in certain directions would actually be a diminution of the quality of life in the west end of the city. So it's adequate parking on site and the relationship between the parking and the traffic. And all of these things that the neighbors have said on Grove Avenue came out of a consensus discussion session that happened in neighborhood meetings. Thank you.
Thank you. All right, I've got one more speaker slip, and I'm sorry to announce I cannot pronounce the name. If it's Perose? I should know your name. I see you at all the meetings, but it's when you see it on paper, it's difficult to pronounce.
Good evening. My name is Piruz Khan Malik, 609 Park Avenue. Park Avenue.
What did you say your address was?
609 Park Avenue.
9 Park Avenue.
Park Avenue, actually, I've been in that, my office has been in that area since 1998. Park Avenue is a beautiful street, and I hope we always keep it that way. And I'm sure with the project like Mason Row, when that project is completed and other commercial properties that are available on Park Avenue are developed, this is going to be even more beautiful. Park Avenue is about 80% commercial. And if you drive back and forth on Park Avenue a couple of times, you'll notice that 80% of Park Avenue is commercial. And it's designed to have a good amount of traffic. So I don't think that we should worry too much about the traffic on Park Avenue, because that's the way it's designed to be. The project, I have talked about the project many times before. It's a nice project. It's going to bring a lot of foot traffic and life to the city. And I definitely believe the way that corner is right now doesn't represent the most richest county in the country. And I hope this project goes through, and especially with all the changes that are happening. And I'm sure it's going to be a beautiful project. One other thing I'd like to mention about, it's been a lot of concern about the parking on Park Avenue. And there have been some suggestions, like every other jurisdictions. There could be some restricted signs for residential parking. So the residents are be comfortable that they have some hours they can park without worrying about anybody taking their parking spaces, just like many other jurisdictions. And that's all. Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you. That's the last of our speaker slips. Oh, I'm sorry. Okay, I've called everybody that I have, but please come up.
Jeff Hendrickson. I live on 916 Park Avenue, right across from the proposed Mason Row. First, I'd like to thank the developers for coming. I mean, there's 5 people. You're here taking your time. We really appreciate that. I'm the one that sent the 900 block memo to you guys, which I think you have at this point. And so to talk about those concerns, there's lots of concerns with the project. Everybody worries about traffic. The unique concerns for 900 block of Park Avenue, it's too bad I can't use the computer. I had some cool pictures. I'll just have to describe them. Is the residential entrance on Park Avenue that they're proposing. I can see the developer's point, but obviously we'd prefer not to have it. I have a cool picture here of the gated entrance at, where was that, next to the Papa John's, you know, whatever road that's on? And do you want that across from you? And also, if people are taking a left out of there, or people are taking a left in there when church is out, then that's going to back up that street quite a bit more. And then Kim, of course, was talking about the lights shining in on 2 or 3 of our homes, you know, at 2 o'clock in the morning. That'd be a bad thing. Then
You can submit your pictures if you'd like to us, and we'll see them later.
And then parking on Park Avenue. Our side, on the north side of Park Avenue, we're requesting to get 24-hour permit parking for the residents. And that doesn't really cost the developer anything. Doesn't seem like it costs the city anything. This seems like a good idea, I think. And that is a residential side of the street. And pretty much every house on that street has at least 1 car parked on the street. And there's like 3 days of the week right now with church that we can't park there at various times. And we'd hate for that to go to 7 days a week with this kind of project. And I took a picture here just on Sunday of somebody further up the block trying to pull out, you know, backwards into the street, and it took them no less than 1.5 minutes when I took a nice picture of that. But oh, here's a good one. Like a month ago, a minivan parked between my and Callahan's driveway. You can't see. I don't know if you can see the minivan and my driveway. It's a good like 3 feet, on mine and a good 2 feet on theirs. And this happens every couple of months, So, and one time was the best. They took up literally half of my driveway, one car. We actually caught the driver of that car as they were coming out. It wasn't me personally or the Callahans, but we said, well, one of our neighbors said, I'm not sure that's a good spot. And they said, oh, sure, it'll be fine. And they just went on about their business. So. Oh, and also the number, that's right, you always bring up the number of accidents. I've had 2 cars hit on Park Avenue. I think you've had like 3 or something, you said. So we paid to have a driveway installed, and the driveway cost more than the car that I now drive. So it was unfortunate that I had to do that. And then the last concern that I wanted to talk about was the condominiums along Park Avenue. And we would like for it to be reduced to 3 stories along most of Park Avenue. Perhaps maybe the zoning is residential right now, and that has to be changed to something more in order to allow them to go above 35 feet, I think it is. So, and I know the developer is making some concessions on that, where it's 3 levels and then 4 and then 5. But the 3 levels is really just above the parking entrance, which is like less than one of the houses that is there now, and then it steps up really fast up to the 5. So I have a nice picture. We went over to Bethesda Row, which this project is sometimes compared to, and the picture here, is where I was standing across the street from Bethesda Row, pretty much where our houses would begin, and I literally could not get the whole height of the Bethesda Row into the shot. And that's a 5-story building there. I think parts of it are going to be 6 is what's proposed. And I mean, if I can't get into the whole camera shot, I mean, it's just like, it just blots out the sun, I mean, for a residential street right across from it, to have it be 5 stories tall is a bad thing as far as I'm concerned. Okay, thank you very much.
Okay, thank you very much, Mr. Henderson. And thanks for your picture. And yes.
Hello, Mike Winters, 324 Grove Avenue. And it's a little unbalanced that a lot of information is presented on the view graphs by the developer, but when we have an opportunity to comment, it's all kind of packed up. So it would be helpful in the future if anything that's presented to the committee or the council or the public is available for discussion. So I'll make use of some of the charts here. Being on Grove Avenue, of course, I'm very concerned about traffic, but I think that's been well addressed. So I'm going to move on to something else, which is kind of the harmonious placement with the WNOD and the setback on West Avenue. And if you notice the view graphs here, we can see Park. We saw a lot of slides about Broad. We did not really see the view. It was discussed 14-foot on West. So where you have this nice open area here, everybody can see, this looks very inviting. Like a bicycle, child in a park carrier. I think they're looking for bicycle parking. That was discussed. You see him over there looking somewhere else, but I'm sure that'll be taken care of, because that's easy.
I think you should speak into the mic so we have you on record.
You bet. So it's a nice inviting area, but if you look at the view graph from west, where we only saw just a little speck of it, right as the hotel abuts the entrance right there at West and Grove, we didn't see the rest because there's not much to, if you just take, it's a lot of concrete or, whatever building materials they're working, and a very narrow sidewalk. So you got the WNOD trail, people zooming by, hey, what's going on over here? Well, here's the happy scene, and it's inside. So this great open space here is created by pushing this thing here all the way to West Street as far as the city permits. And 14 feet isn't much. So what the residents get and what the people on the WNOD get is a big wall. Sure, there's a pretty inviting place inside, all shady rather than sunny. So I would offer to the developers that if I was whizzing by the WNOD on my bicycle and my friends were sitting out cafe style, kind of like you showed on Broad Street or in here, I'd call her, hey, Kate, hey, Bob, come on over. We got a seat for you. There's some coffee here. It could be something, it could help, a lot of the issues of the height or the imposition on the residents by just pushing it back, maybe 50-foot setback, and make that a welcome kind of a transition into the WNOD. Because right now, you go from WNOD, green space, into edifice. I think it could, if this was more what you saw from the city, it might be a little easier to digest. And one last thing, if I got a second, is if only one, what are there, 250, 350 residential units? I don't remember the number. Anybody know? Okay, 253. So if only 1% of those each morning and each afternoon said, honey, I need a ride to the metro, let me zip you up and then get a call in the afternoon. 1 to 2% of the residents did that. That would trash the 7% or 7 cars per day, or 7 morning, 7 afternoon. You can do the math, it's easy. And that's not counting any commercial, and that's not counting anything other than just residents. So I think, I don't know if the traffic engineer ever did show up, but we need a more exhaustive answer to that. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Winters. Anyone else? Okay, thank you very much. We really do appreciate your participation. This is part of the process that makes these projects work better for our city. So don't feel that we're not paying attention. We are paying attention. And we use your concerns when we talk to the developer as well. So thank you so much for coming. We have no old business, new business, or other business. So we're going to move on to the approval of minutes. Has everyone on the Planning Commission had a chance to look at the minutes from August the 4th? Are there any amendments?
I was not present, so I'll be abstaining.
Oh, good, then you won't be able to move. Okay. Are there any corrections or additions to the minutes? Okay. All right, do I have a motion to approve?
I so move.
Is there a second?
I'll second.
It's been moved and seconded to approve the motion, to approve the minutes of August the 4th, 2014 of the Planning Commission. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
Abstain.
Oh.
I wasn't here.
Abstain, and you're abstaining? Two abstentions. The motion passes. Ms. G, the minutes are approved. Are there any Planning Commission reports? Okay. The Planning Director must be downstairs at the City Council meeting. And we have this, is there anything that you want to pull out from this report of the Planning Director to discuss?
No, at this point.
Something to look forward to.
Yes, we can talk about it next week. Do I have a motion to adjourn?
So move.
I second.
Okay, meeting is adjourned. Thank you all for coming.